just to finish the limud that we started about the five parts of a human being. So we had a whole discussion of so far the nefesh, ruach, and neshama part, which is stuff that we kind of basically relate to. Even neshama, we can conceptually hear it. Um, and we spoke about the different types of Torah that relates and ignites and enlivens each part. Now we're going to talk about two things that are kind of hard to understand because they're really above our reality. So we'll learn them kind of beklolius, which is called chaya and yechida. And chaya, its definition is that it's bechinas makif. It's not able to be expressed. The human body, the human reality, is too limited for it to be actually able to be expressed in the body, and therefore it's not even expressed necessarily in dibur. In order for a person to experience and live their chaya, they have to do something called ispashtus agashmias, which is to go leave your present reality and go to the core of your reality. And he calls it sod machshava nelemes and virusa de liba, right? And I think that the way to tap into this on a intuitive level is that we all have experiences of having some kind of awareness of something that we can't yet even put into a structured thought and feelings, and we take this thing that we have, and then we use our brain to consciously try to make sense of it. So it's a feeling of being somewhere out there around me, and then I try to use my kelim to tap into it and bring it down. So that's the truth is everything really works like that. It's just sometimes we experience it and sometimes we don't. But what it's teaching us is that we shouldn't think that we're limited to understanding things because we have brains and because we were trained and because we actually are like radio wave. There's radio waves in the world, and we are like an antenna. And depending on how much you're able to lift up your antenna, or in the mashal and the nimshal, that would become more conscious of that part of yourself and become more aware that it exists. So an example of chaya is that in order to understand stuff, you have to think 1, 2, 3, 4. It functions in time, and it's functions in structure. In chaya, the information download of hasaga of stuff you can have literally in 1 second. You have the whole thing, because it's not limited to those. And of course, afterwards you have to translate what you experienced. But there was a awareness of something to be true, that it was like before and after. It's now different. I've stepped into a new reality, and this is really where nevuah comes from. Where nevuah is an example, like the Rambam writes in that a navi, his body, from the Psukim it says his body shook, and the functionality of Gashmias was taken over by something outside of it, and it was stopped being the main the controlling aspect of the person. And when a navi got something, he didn't have to is it true? Is it not true? Does it make sense to me? He knew it. It was true as he knows his name. It's just a fact. And then he had to use his own kalim to the words to give it over. But the revelation was just immediate, right? And so we can't really speak about it because it's above speech. We can talk about an experience that we've gotten in touch with, and it's interesting that the mazon, that the Torah just means shefa from Hashem, that was that was made in ways that people can relate to that shefa. So the same way a mitzvah is something, shefa from Hashem that is put into a very tachlis action, put on tefillin, and you have a now relationship with Ratzon Hashem, and limud Torah is talking about concepts that we all relate to because it's in our life, but it's all about Ratzon Hashem. And then we learn Sod. It's like we're learning the how it's like the inside version. We're actually having conversation with Hashem about what He wants and His plans and what's going on inside of Him, His midos. We have more of an intimate relationship with Him, not just talking about the things that He wants done in His Medina, right? So that's all revelations of Torah. The revelation of Torah, which has to do with Chaya and Yechida, is what's called Yichudin. It's basically all shemos of Hashem, and it's not so much a machshava experience. You are, as much as I understand it, which I don't, but going up to this words which hold in it a direct essence instead of what's necessarily if there's a difference between the midah of a person, right? And then the midah means to say is how of my ratzon is expressed in this situation, in this event. Like simply put, I decide to have rachamim in this current specific topic, but all of me that decides that makes that decision is something more pinimi inside of me, right? So that's more of the olam of yichud. When you're talking about yichudim, you're talking about shemos Hashem. You're talking much more towards the revelation of not just how He reacts in certain circumstances, but His essence, right? And so it's not even like in your world, because He is above your world. It's not like how He decided to act in relationship to human beings. It's who He was that He decided to act from. So when you're doing that, it's not a consciousness of I understand, I worked it out, I understand what you're thinking. I am just relating. It's just being with, and whatever I use this shame, which holds in it this essence. That's every time you use a word, it's really hiding some kind of essence inside of it. So it's a way of jumping to that essence through the words of. So you spend time focusing on those shemos, and through those shemos you get in touch with this place which is completely outside of our world, right? And so that's why it's a bechina of hispashus agashmis, because you're putting your consciousness in something which has nothing to do with our world at all. It's like going into Him and His world. So, and because the core of everything, it's like the same way you can understand a lot of the human being by understanding the DNA, right? You have if you really went inside DNA and you looked at or just a seed of a tree, and you really look, you're living from inside that tree, you understand all about what's happening later in 1 second, because you have the core of everything. So that's what happens when you're in an experience of Chai. Your ability to see things is from a core place, so it doesn't need the whole process of Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, right? So that's the Bechina of Chaya, and like I said, I don't know the person who is people who lived from that are people who lived in Yichud and we're thinking about Shemus all day long, and I don't think that we necessarily can relate to that in terms of a day-to-day level, but I do think it's, like I said before, it's important to not limit our ability, thinking that we can't understand stuff, because since all of these bechinos are existing in a person, it means that the place we're drawing from is a place which is above all of my limitations and all of my life and all of the constraints that I have, and that's funneling down through my neshama and through my ruach and through my nefesh. But it's starting big. So really, 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 we're in connected to that level of hasaga, even if we're not going to be able to translate it in our consciousness, because where we're holding is not conscious of being have that avidat chaya, but it's still existing. And so therefore, when a person gets like a download, they shouldn't like saying, I didn't read this in a sefer somewhere, so it's not true. No, give it respect. Try to get what it's trying to give you as something which is above you, and trying to deliver that. And the more we have emunah of these kochos, the more we can use them.
Where is it coming from?
Everything is coming from Shammai, from Hashem. Everything. It's just, that's why I said before, it's all.
Is it possible to be misunderstood? Could it send you in the wrong direction?
Anything can be misunderstood, because just take for example what it says about Sod, right? That the limud of Sod is completely dependent on your midos. If you have bad midos, then you're going to misinterpret Sod and make it bad, right? So that's why it was a tremendous azhara not to osek in neshama level Torah until you've dealt with the ruach, because you can't bring it down through those kalim, right? So of course, obviously, kal v'chomer and things that are so high that of course, it has to go through your kalim. So always have to check yourself 100 times, and that's really what the word amelas haTorah means, is to check if there's interventions of negative klipos that are impacting your thought process.
Right. I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, but I thought it was very sweet. The Medrash says that when Yonah ran away, he went to the port and he saw way out in the distance a tiny speck of an incoming ship. And then miraculously there was a wind and what would have taken 2 days, it showed up in a few hours. And he said, "This is a sign from God that I'm doing the right thing. I'm supposed to run away, not supposed to do that mission." And so it's a very interesting lesson, for Yom Kippur, but, that sometimes you have to question your motives, but, you just...
That's an example of B'derach she'adam olech molichim, that Shamayim will always give you the opportunity to believe. There's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah which describes how it's a pasuk. I forgot exactly the pasuk, but that Hashem will dafka allow pu'ulos of Avodah Zarah to work, to impact the spiritual realm, in order to give people that choice of believing in not an Elokus, right? So you always have the chiyur.
Right. So if you get this sensation you were describing, is it possible it's, I don't know, yeah, you have to, is it possible it's trying to give you free choice and leading you off the cliff? I mean, I don't know.
I think that we're always getting downloads, always. Sometimes we're really conscious of the fact that it's happening. I think that the same way, maybe this will help, like biology is completely true, correct? Yeah,
As much as we know, it keeps changing, but yeah.
Right. But it's truth in that there really is a change, let's say, in the neurons of the brain and brain waves, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the source, right? If once you get a little bit deeper with human beings, there's an entire realm which no one can pick up on a biology computer, which has to do with your personality and your ritzonos and your need for meaning, that really are causality to all of those neurological things that we can pick up on the brain, correct? Okay, so really that's a paradigm shift in everything. Because I'll give you another muscle. It's like you have a building, right? So you're very conscious of the building. Touch the walls, but it's obvious that it didn't start as a building. It started in someone's head. And then it started in a few commands to hire people. And then it started with another thing of people putting bricks on top of bricks. There was a lot of stages in between, right? So we're living in a very superficial reality where we think things are starting from the place that we're conscious of, but it's never starting in that sense. It's always that every human being, what they have revelations about, trickles down from Hashem, starting at the highest place, at Yechida, Chaya, Neshama, and what the person is able to perceive is where they're conscious, but it doesn't mean it isn't true. So when every type of revelation that we have about anything in the world, which is, it's all about revelation, it's all about becoming more conscious of the source of the universe, starts off as this outside idea trying to be funneled in through the kalim that we have in our life. Always. So, and that's why you have people who decide to have inventions. You know, they think of this whacked out, you can fly. Like, where'd you get that one from? Right? And, or even let's say in our times, AI, like you see in different parts of the universe, like people, yeah, let's do AI in China, let's do AI in America. Like, are they working together? Like, how does it work that, you know, one side of the universe, one side of the earth develops something, and also because it's coming from a higher place and just expressing itself within different human beings. So you're always getting things beyond you, and you're translating them. That's really what's happening. Just the more you're aware of it, the more you believe it, the less limited you are. Because then you're not going to say, well, you know, there's no way for me to understand this because it'll take me 1,000 years to, like, you know, understand. Like, Rav Chaim Vital learned everything he knew from the Arizal, which is Shmona Sh'arim of, like, I think it was a year and a half he was with him. Like, that doesn't even make sense, because people know things without all of these outer trappings of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and once they have it, they have it. And we have to realize that's how everything works. You can know stuff way beyond your kalim, and then because you're gifted from Shamayim, and then you translate it, and you translate it. So within the translation, you have to be very careful. What's motivating me to think about these things? What's actually the core idea, and what's actually something which is, I have this ulterior motive that I want to believe it. And that's always the question of midos. Always.
Right. I mean, I guess it relates to what you were saying before that you know, Shammai may be correct that in theory Islam is closer and could be flipped if it had awareness of things that are wrong with it. But I guess it's turned into a way of power and controlling people, which is very hard to give up. So why would a country give up the control they have? You know,
it's more than that. Is that the kalim they have are para adam. They're actually, as the Torah describes it, missing a certain version of Tzelem Elohim, and so even though they had a spiritual download of Emunah, it came out really whacked out. That they can, you know, rape little girls and think that's holy. I mean, it's quite crazy.
Right.
So, and they can kill people all the time and feel like, yeah, we're holy. I mean, so most human beings, when they kill people, they don't think they're holy anymore, and it's a real problem. And even when they do it l'shem shamayim, like for protection, they struggle with it for the rest of their life. We don't see that with them. So they have messed up kalim.
Right. Those kalim can undergo a tikkun. They can can get that piece, that missing piece of humanity that's part of that.
One of the most important revelations you have to have is that healing and tikkun is not only possible, it's ultimate. It's going to happen.
Right.
And it's easy to understand that the way we're talking about things is when you understand that a person's source is actually much greater than the expressions that he has in a lower event. So it's just a question of when that source is going to become more palatable and more strong, and everything else will follow suit. So people have bechira and they have different kalim, but if that light gets greater, if that source energy becomes stronger within them, and that could happen by a multitude of reasons, because that energy is connected, as we're going to learn about Yechida, that energy is connected to all other places in the world, and it doesn't function on its own. So when you have light being brought in on one side of the world, and on that level gets stronger, so the person is now able to question themselves and change rather quickly. So we don't give too much credit to klipa. It's like, yeah, it's there.
Right, but if the paradam means that they're, missing something to get to the level of an adam, so that missing part can be
Everything can be healed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could actually change their bria. Really, they have to change into a human being, and that's possible. It's not just a mida. It's like they have to first become human, and then, I don't know, be very technical, but.
Yeah, but I definitely believe that because everything is sourced in holiness, and the only way klipa, the only way bad can have is to cover something up. That's what the concept of klipa means. So at a certain point you can't cover up anymore. It's just too light. And so people are changed naturally, and they're not able to, like it was in Power in Mitzrayim. He started, Mi Hashem Asher Eshma B'Kolo, and then it's like Kriyas Yamsuf. Well, I mean, okay, obviously he's here, That's going to move you and affect you, like the Medrash says, whether it's literal or not. He was the Melech of Nineveh, right? He had to move. There was no way for him to stay the same power after that. So revelation is a very powerful thing. So yes, I do believe that you can heal all that stuff.
Okay, that's good to hear.
There is a bechina of what you're saying, which is true, which is that the Gezeira of Misa has in it the understanding that in order to the world to advance to a stage of Tchias HaMesim, which is the neshama taking the body and metamorphosizing it and evolving it to a state more like itself, that with the Chet Adam Rishon became impossible without you returning to the core elements and rebuilding. Okay, so in that respect, yes, it's not possible to come to Tikkun HaShalim without Maves. But if you're talking about midos that have to do with literal Tikkun Olam in terms of functionality, Olam Hazeh, right? That's the concept of Mashiach, that in vain Mosa Mashiach El Shibud Malchios Bilvad, that the world will be a place where, like the Psukim say, the lions won't eat the Zeyavim, all of these midos of killing that were in the world since the time of Cain, they can be mitukan, and we don't have to have that level of functionality. Humankind can be an elevated humankind. Can they be like Chanoch and Eliyahu and Moshe Rabbeinu, where their goof was mizdachech? No, that we need mavis for. But that's a different. That's Olam Haba. That's a different stage. Now, after this madrega of Chaya, there's something called Yechida, which is something which is beyond our comprehension that we can't really even talk about it, right?
That's how you introduced the last.
Right.
So
No,
this is beyond.
This is the other part was beyond in the sense that it's not the topic of conversation is not us. The topic of conversation is Hashem. So you have to leave your universe to even talk about it. You have to be Svashus Agashmius, and you have to. The topic is like I said, Shemos, right? But within the world of Shemos, there's still an experience of many different experiences. Yechida is like a light of oneness, where everything is God, and you don't even see. You don't even see. I mean, I can't really talk about it because I don't know. I was never there, but that I can experience. But it's much higher up in the level of the goal, which is that the end. There isn't all of these different millions. It's like the difference between the rainbow and then seeing the light that was the source of the rainbow. So What's interesting though is that he says over here it's from the Arizal and Yalkut Shmoini that the level of Mashiach is level of Yechida, and it's a level higher even Moshe Rabbeinu, which is interesting to think about in terms of what the Rambam says in Yud Gimel Midos of Ikarim, that he says there's no one Gadol and Nevuah more of Moshe Rabbeinu. Not sure how those things go together, right? But okay, so that's talking about the concept of Yechida, which is definitely something which we can know that exists, but it's very hard for us to even have an intuitive relationship with it.
Thank you.
You came perfect time, Ellie, because now we're going to shift to the expression of neshama, of nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida in the am. Okay, but just understand all of this is talking about a live person. A dead person loses all of these madregos, right? And that's why it has no personality, it has no actions, whatever it is, and that's what we're talking about is Golos. Golos was we're so level of dead that even a level of nefesh, which is about practically expressing, mice and mitzvos and living in a proper way was like Chazal say, was in practice in Chutz La'aretz. It wasn't the actual expression of the mitzvah. The tefillin of Chutz La'aretz, the sukkah of Chutz La'aretz is different than the sukkah of Eretz Yisrael.
Does this, wouldn't some people say this doesn't jive with Jewish history because such great scholarship was achieved in Golos?
And I'll add more than just scholarship. I'll add spiritual work and mitzvahs.
Yeah.
And I think of how the Hasidim, and I grew up relating with the Sukkah. I can't, if Israel does have its own level, that I wouldn't negate them.
Okay, so everything is never.
You make it sound brain dead.
It's like saying when a kid, cleans up the house and does their homework and understands something in cheder, it's like that's not valuable. Right? It's very valuable. It's just if you put things in context of what's possible. So what's the difference in context? The difference in context, as we've been speaking about the whole time, is that's very individual work. First of all, it's survival. It's like kiyum mitzvos, even though the world is fighting against you, number one, on a simple level. But more than that, it's all individual growth that person had into his world. The sod of sukkah is kol ezrach b'Yisrael yesh v'sukkah achas. It's a level of achdus that all of whatever godless, all of the people you just spoke about achieved, they had no consciousness of being la'am that we have simply by living in this country under one government, right? They couldn't bridge that gap. So a mitzvah that is done by an am, as we Jews do this, is something completely different than someone has incredible dveikos by putting on their tefillin.
And that's the case even on the nefesh level.
Right. I was talking about ma'aseh mitzvos right now, right? Like we spoke about, the sod of tefillin is it very much can give you a spiritual download. But Rohu kol ben am aretz as Shem Hashem nikra elecha, right? If an am is going to war and their tetzugah, the way they express themselves is we wear tefillin, then it's a completely different, revelation of what it means to be Am Hashem in the world. That you are the people who are Atet Tzoma Risi, you are Bnei Bechori Yisrael. That's a totally different revelation of that concept than that could possibly happen by someone's beautiful tefillin in Varsha.
Right, but you're actually comparing it to maybe the time of David Melech or Shlomo. You're not today. I mean, you're saying that we don't have an army going out wearing tefillin and saying, it's because of our belief system that we're going to win this war. That's not where we are. So
right. So we understood that, right? What shlav are we in? We are shlav of binyan haguf.
Right.
Right. What I was talking about the level of nefesh, which comes in after you have this physical body. So the first bechina that's going to resonate in Klal Yisrael is here. Let's plug it in, right? So Parsha Shoftim has in it is the description of. Let's make a step before we go into this. I'll make a point, which is that the same way a human being is divided up in 5 parts, nefesh, ruach, chaya, neshama, chaya, yechida. So is the revelation of the klolius of Nishmas Yisrael, of Knesset Yisrael, is also divided up in those 5 chalakim. And actually it goes the opposite. The reason why their human being has 5 chalakim is because he's a microcosm of something greater, right? Which is the Nishmas Yisrael. And of course, whatever exists in the miniature version exists in the macro version. Okay, so actually it goes the opposite. That the reason it's always the source, like the pasuk, the sod of the pasuk of Atem, son marisi Adam Atem, right? That the klolius of Am Yisrael is called Adam. So it has all of these 5 bechinas in them. So when the Torah is coming to talk about in the mitzvos that are relevant to the whole Am, it's keneged the binyan of all of these different chalakim of Torah, different mitzvahs of Torah are coming to bring that part out of the collective Am, the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, and we're going to see different mitzvahs do different things. And then we'll get to the point you're bringing out, that where we're holding, right? So the first part of Parsha Shoftim, which talks about the concept of melech, som tasi melech melech, right? Malchus is what does a melech do? His job is a melech he's the merkaz chayei haguf v'nefesh ba'am, right? He's the one who deals with the roads. He's the one who deals with the functionality of government, taxes. He deals with police. He deals with all of the different parts that make the day-to-day functionality being in a metukan way. Like the Drush Saran is marich, that the melech is the halachas of Sanhedrin, let's say Misas Bezdin or these type of things, or the halachas of Parshas Mishpatim, are not the halachas of the melech. The melech actually can do whatever he wants, whatever he thinks he's goes there. And the difference, as he is marich over there, is that the job of the melech is tikkun hamadina. It's very much has to do with this worldly functions. It's not. He's not coming in his malchus, in his decisions, to bring the olam to ultimate tikkun of dveikus b'Hashem netzach nitzachim. He's trying to make the traffic lights. He's trying to, He was
also a shofet, so wasn't he trying to?
Yeah, he was trying to like people have sichsuchim, people deal with each other, right? Like the whole story with Shlomo Melech and the 2 women, right?
Right. So that must have been a tremendous moral boost to the people, because they realize he's beyond traffic lights. He's
No, what you're saying is that the functionality of the Am has to be through the morals of Torah. That's true. The Melech's moral code, he has to look in the Torah all the time and figure things out what to do, right? But he is using the moral code of the Torah to decide. There is much chelik of Torah, which is called the Rishus, which there isn't a mefurish halacha. The halacha is like Vasisa, Vayosher, Vatov. Now, what's called Yosher Vatov in every given situation? So, as Torah Sheba'al Peh developed, we have halachas about that, right? But those are halachas that were necessary because we didn't have a malchus going on. But if there's a government going on, like we do in the Knesset nowadays, there's constant discussions of what's correct, moral correct. How do you run the financial system of the government, and how do you run social services, and what laws are good? This is not the job of the Sanhedrin. It's the job of the Melech. And it's the job, as the makbil of that, and the kochas and nefesh of the Am, it's the nefesh, right? It's the part that has to do with tachlis l'maisa. I need to do with day-to-day function, what's good and healthy for the functionality of a Medina, right? And we're holding already in that stage, right? But we don't have as you spoke about before, we're lacking the ruach, which is the guiding force. So in our body, it's very similar to what's happening in the Goyish version of the reality, where the reductionalists are pretending that a body doesn't have a soul. It's pretending that everything motivates. You're motivated by just bodily needs, but not any overarching meaning behind it. And that's not Malchus Yisrael. We need a tikkun of the Malchus that we have nowadays, that it has to be much more representing, morals and values of Torah. And that's the stage that Yechezkel is talking about, where after you have a physical building of a Medina, then the Ruach comes milamala, which is the Ruach of the Shechina, and it will express itself on a technical nefesh level through a Malchus, which is governed by Kolei Torah.
It sounds like David and maybe to a less extent, or Shlomo, were anomalies in this perfect paradigm because they were, I don't know, maybe you could say they were Nevi'im. They wrote Kisvei Kodesh, for which all of Torah is, they spilled over. They weren't neatly into the package of building the Medina. They spilled over into very big spiritual areas. For even the Sanhedrin might have, been influenced by the Kisvei Kodesh that they wrote. So it wasn't a neat package, but maybe that was the anomaly. That wasn't. I don't know. I guess it had to start that way. I mean,
no, I don't. I actually would like you to consider thinking about Tehillim, Shir Hashirim, right? They're not nevuah. They're not one of the. Look where the Chof Dalet Svarim are written, right? We have Tanakh, which is Torah. We have Nevi'im, and we have Ksuvim. Why is it split up like that? What's the intention over there, right? So was Shlomo HaMelech bringing down a nevuah when he said those words? I don't think so. I think it was more closer to what's called Ruach HaKodesh, and he was a very active part. It came through him. I think it's a very good expression of Malchus, of where you're imbuing all of the experiences you have in Lamala in your personal expression. It's coming through you. You understand the difference between Tehillim and a Nevuah?
Yeah, but I guess like when you're learning Gemara, and certainly Medrash, everything is proven from, so much is proven from Ketuvim. It means that embedded in the Ketuvim were the signposts to understand everything. So everything. So it means that they went beyond building roads. Those two were shaking the foundations of Yahadus and how it was developing in our...
Why do you say those two? All of the good Malachim were like that. Yoshio, Chizkiyo, everybody. Anybody, even the Chashmonaim who were a messed up Malchus in terms of the thing. Malchus is always... We don't have what they wrote that is being quoted, but okay, they have... Yeah, because they weren't in the revelation of the time. They were Torah Shebal Peh. It wasn't Torah Shebchsav. So that's a different type of revelation. But there's no question that the leadership of a melech is not the same way Yosef was always, even though he was a melech in very details of Olam Hazeh, he was always expressing Hashem. So every melech, that's why he has to learn the Torah all day long. What he's, the halachas of the Am that govern day-to-day life, that the Melech would also, his job was to make sure that it happened, was kilayim. They sent out the business, sent down every look at the field to see if there was kilayim. They ran the constitution, the halachas of how the who was supposed to deal with if Ir and Idachas. I mean, it's also Sanhedrin, but I'm saying the Melech is involved in making sure that Torah is kept. Right. So what does it say in Pasuk Eicha? Melech Bagoyim Ein Torah. Uma Kesher Melech Bagoyim suddenly Ein Torah, because the Yisum, the practicality, the application of Torah being the running moral system in the world, right? the one who actually decided what happened in the day-to-day life in the Malchus was the Melech, right? You can have rabbis sitting in Sanhedrin all day long, but who's going to enact, who's going to make those things? That's much more Shotrim, that's much more Malchus, right? So if you don't have all of your relationship with Hashem set out like you have, like David HaMelech had and Shlomo HaMelech had, you can't do the job properly, which is the Malchus we see right now. It's a Malchus of Guf without even Nefesh. It doesn't have this, it's dead. It's literally just a functional body, right? So you're asking, we don't have tefillin, right? We're missing all of the mitzvos, the Amami mitzvos, because the Shechina is not guiding this body yet. The second the Shechina guides this body, the entire Am will be driven to do mitzvos from a central place. And it will be a bunch of people doing a central core idea that together they make up something greater than every mitzvah individually that possibly could happen. And that's the difference between Golus and Gula. We had huge tzaddikim, but they weren't an army of lulavs. They weren't an army of tefillin.
Right. So this essentially, what we're saying now, is essentially the difference, or say the core of a conversation that I have if I talk to somebody, let's say even my chavrusas in the kollel, this is why I get a blank stare, because we're trying to say that this process has the potential when the guf gets its neshama, but right now they can't see how this guf pales compared to the Torah that they're learning all day. They're learning Gemara that came from Babel, and don't tell me that we're in this, amazing process. It's just a guf. Get over it. It's just a guf. Stop fantasizing.
Right.
This is exactly what I face
and
every day.
And yet,
Do you face this? Am I the only one?
and yet, every single person
Yeah.
has a part of themselves which is moved by the difference between this goof that we make so much fun of, right? The fact that it's working in unison in a way that it, as a group, what it's able to accomplish on a worldly level flattens completely what anybody could have impacted the world with their individual mitzvahs. And it didn't even get to the stage of neshama yet. It didn't get to the stage of the ruach coming inside of it. But the shinui tikkun olam that's happening is far greater than anything we've ever seen. Everybody has to agree to that. Now, they could say, it's not perfect, but to not value something because it hasn't gotten to the end is just a bad way of judging anything. You have to be aware that Am Yisrael's impact on the world has grown exponentially because of this goof thing.
Right, but to play devil's advocate, you could say that's because of the communications in the world has changed. So the Vilna Gaon, who knew all knowledge of the world, people in the world, other great people didn't know, wow, there's somebody who knows so much. If they knew him, it would have been sent shockwaves, but there was no podcast. He didn't.
Really, let's imagine
there was no reporter. You could imagine if everybody
knew there was a genius.
There's a guy that, not just a genius, but he knew everything.
He knew everything.
And Torah, and it all worked together. And you say, well, I'm forced to rethink whether maybe the fact that I only know physics and this guy knows physics and Torah, maybe I'm missing something. There could have been huge things, but I'm sorry, nobody knows what's going on over there. So
you're telling me that the fact that we have a genius in the world makes a huge impact. Let's guy getting Stephen Hawking, who's like a genius and I don't know what in physics. How much impact did he make on the world?
A lot of people went off the derech thanks to him.
Yeah, there are some people there. How much is he talked about every single day in the newspaper?
Okay, but talked about.
I mean, he's impacted.
You sound
Every
like that
single
joke
person.
about the mother who says, my son pays $350 an hour, and he just talks about me. Yeah, okay, getting talked about isn't so great.
No, it's that
we get slandered every day.
Every single tenua this country does is international news daily.
Okay, so why?
There's
is
no
that? Because
we represent the Shechina.
But
Because
we
we-
wouldn't have done it without, okay, so God also helped a little bit by having a media that, you know, if a pin drops in Moscow, we all hear about it. I mean, so that,
There's no question that the media is a level of revelation of Achdus, that everything is one, without a question. But the ability to make a technical impact when a country does something, and it's not only a country, but for a country that for whatever reason is the central nervous system of the entire world, even geographically, but also politically, right? Its ability to impact is always going to be far greater than the biggest genius, the biggest kadosh, the biggest whatever it is, because he's a microcosm, he's tiny. And whatever ideas he puts into the world, what can he do? Can you imagine Elon Musk was a genius but didn't have Tesla, right? He would be far diminished. He didn't have his companies. Your ability to have impact depends much more on just your personal gain, but what's your level of influence? So the level of influence of a country is always going to be greater. The message, the moral values that we put out into the world, because of our wars and because of how our country functions democratically, we're not even in Torah values so much yet. They're the distilled version of Torah values, right? It's much more effective than anything that any tzaddik could have done with all of his avoda. And I'm not coming to diminish the avoda of tzaddik, because that is the reason why that Medina exists. But on an actual level of revelation, the world, the revelation of Hashem comes through an Am in a way that on purpose, that a Yachid can never accomplish.
okay, but again, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Somebody learning world history could also say the Jewish people have intersected every major conflagration in world history. What was the World War II? What did it have to do? Why all of a sudden you got a Holocaust in the middle there? You got a guy obsessed. He lost the war because he wouldn't send the trains that they needed, uniforms, warm coats in Russia, and that, So we're stuck in the middle of all history. So somebody
Everything.
could look at history without anything and say this people is like, so as many famous quotes there are about the Jewish people. If you want to understand God, just the fact that there's a Jewish people.
That's called Shechina Begalusa. In other words, you're right. The Shechina is the core motivating, controlling factor of the whole world. But the way it's expressed in Galus is, like you said, it's like, for some reason, it was like a very important detail in a world war between a lot of countries that suddenly they were the central part, right? But the overlaying what was going on was World War II between Germany and Britain, and the Jews were there mostly as a carbon. That you can't compare that to what's going on in our country now, where we are central because we are the expressed version of an Am. This is what the Jews do. It's not just a hidden part and a very important ingredient that somehow fits in, but it's hidden. We are an actually very loud and prominent, as like Bibi saying the entire time, we are a world power at this point. This tiny country, the side less of New Jersey, is fighting one of the most important wars that probably happened in the last 30 years, at least, right? With the most powerful country in the world. We're like equal allies. Like, who would have thought that, right? Well, all these powers in Europe and in Germany and Europe, their nuclear countries have been fighting, dominating the world for 1,000 years, or like sleeping. Right? It's weird.
Okay, but it's also weird. I mean, I don't know. I've never read a book like this, but let's say when the church was in control of Europe,
right?
So their obsession was
the Jews.
Getting about Jews, and it changed everything they did. All the Crusades, it's all about Jews. Like
we are always going to be the topic.
We're the cog in the wheel of everything.
That's what it means. Shechina Begaluso. That's what it means. We're always Lo Ma'astem Ve'Galgaltim L'Chisim. They're always Hashem is the revelation of Hashem is always going to be through the Jews. In the same way Hashem is constant, Jews are going to be constant. Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker. We are Netzach. But the way we impact the world, being victims and the ones who are always slaughtered and the ones who are always somehow the scapegoats, is a very different revelation to the world than the country which is standing up against the biggest evil, most evil regime in the country in the world and putting it destroying it to pieces. They're representing good, they're representing evil. It's a very different revelation.
Well, some would say since we controlled everything even before we had a state. We controlled banking and everything else, right? We had Rothschilds, who were the only ones you could trust each other, had an international banking system. We
do
already
control
were
the world.
sending shockwaves.
We do control the world, but not for the reason people think, because we have all these mitos, because the source of the world is the Shekhinah. And we are the Shekhinah. So of course everything happens after us. So we have some sense of control, and we impact with our maisim, everything that Shekhinah, where that Shekhinah is holding. So of course we end up having they're not lying, they're just misunderstanding it, right? But that isn't the point. The point is that your question was, let's going back to the original question, is yes, we are very impactful as a nation, right? But as a nation, if you take all of the gilui of Torah Shebaal Peh, which is an amazing accomplishment of the Gemara and the Mishnayos and all the different mitzvahs that every individual community did as a Jew, it's still less impactful to the world in a visual sense and a revealed sense than 70 years of a country who was Chiloni, right? So that's what it means, that the goof is a necessary component, that without it you don't have Shekhinah in the world, and when you do, even on the level which is missing the Ruach, we're at stage 1, we still see such a huge impact of what I can imagine. That is in order to teach us what's possible, that if we bring the Ruach, all of that Torah which people represented on an individual level, we translate it into a community level in ways that now it's a Ruach that is relevant to all of the people working together. Can you imagine what's going to happen to the world because of the position that we have of that goof?
Okay, just so you don't travel in circles where people will make fun of you, but I do. So you have to understand, from their perspective, they say, you're taking a secular Western idea of a country and you're imbuing it with all this meaning and potential. It's like, wait a second, this wasn't a Jewish idea. It's not this isn't a, it's not
I didn't know it wasn't a Jewish idea. I read Parshas Sefer Bereshis and Sefer Shmos.
They're going to say, if it's a modern political thing, it has no, you understand. I just want to...
Okay, so now let's look at it. Parshas Shoftim. Let's look at Parshas Sefer Bereshis, Sefer Shmos, which is all about the land, the Am, way before Torah.
Right.
And then the Torah that is given in Parshas Shoftim specifically is coming to describe Chaye Ha'am, right? All of the different madregas that we have, Malchus, and we're going to learn them about now. Let's say that Malchus, and then there's Sanhedrin, and then there's Kohen Gadol, right? All of these madregas, all of Avodas HaKarbanos, as we spoke about many times, are something that only happens as a klal, right? So the Torah actually cannot be understood in its original form without the concept of klal. We in Gullus have forgotten. With the definition of choshech is you don't. What's the difference in choshech and or? In choshech you have in choshech you don't have a re'iyah, you have touch. So when you touch something, right, you get an individual idea of what this is, what this is, what this is. When you have re'iyah, you see everything together, and you see how everything fits into one process. So because we were in Gullus and choshech, we focused on the microcosms of different parts and things. This is the main point. It's like the fact that you sit and learn that is the purpose of the Bria. Wait, huh? That's not what the Torah says. Okay, that's what they had to focus on, right? So that part of the Torah became very, very, very real to them. Mm-hmm. And yes, we're learning new Torah that wasn't the Torah of Gullus, and there's going to be people who are going to resist and say, no, I don't recognize that. But that's what the Nevi'im are here to tell us, is that this process, and the Pnimi Torah is here to tell us that this process is actually a process of a shift to pull you out of a mentality that was never meant to be, was only a survival method, which is nimshal in the psukim, is to death, right? That's what you're holding. So yeah, if a person doesn't understand what life is, then they're like, death is everything. But, welcome to the life.
Also, you have to admit that the fact that we have this nation here also gets us to broadcast our worst stuff too, right?
Yes.
The whole world is saying,
Yes.
how did they, October 7th, the army didn't show up, who?
Right.
It was all contrived, it was a whole corrupt country, how in the world is that possible? They're bombing Iran every day, and they couldn't bomb the terrorists coming across. The Air Force was nowhere to be found what is that all about? So everything is getting broadcast, the good, the bad, the ugly, right?
Well, it's the same thing with the whole Sefer Torah, right? The scrutiny of all of the tzaddikim that they're underneath. Like the Torah has no rachamim when it discusses you make a mistake, you're lidoros. Everyone's gonna know exactly how Avram caused the Mitzrayim because he said Ma'ida. I mean, as an example, Reuven was Balabel list. Yeah, Yaakov was when he had he questioned that he said what do you call him? Everything is
the whole chapter.
right. The whole chapter. What does that mean? That means that that it's all revealed as Midas Hadin, and everything is about revelation of human beings and their process of bringing Hashem into the world. And yes, the good and the bad, the ugly and the good and it's all there, and there's no question about it.
Okay, I'm just bringing some of my world into your world since you live in a bubble and I don't.
No, it's okay. It's not a question of living in a bubble. It's a question of you have to be aware. It's easy to have tunnel vision and stay in your. It's actually I think that the other way is in a bubble. To not be aware that there's a resurgence of an doing something powerful and having idealisms that is burning through people that they're willing to die for it. 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, right? You have to be like, whoa, what's going on here? If you don't see that, you're living in a bubble.
Right. And people have said to me, oh, that's so sad, they can't get along. I hope they can learn to get along. I told them, I have 4 boys, and I saw, this Rega 7, I don't know if you ever see these videos, they're beautifully done videos, and at one point, the guy says, my wife is screaming to me, there's soldiers at the door. So I opened the door and I said, okay, I have 4 sons of the army, which one died? And they said, Yonatan died, okay. So I left a message for both my kids in America. I said, isn't that powerful? I have 4 sons, and listen, look at the reality that we're living here compared to your reality. How is that possible? People are sacrificing so much. And their reaction was, oh, it's so sad that you guys can't get along. Hope you all get along. Words very sad.
Right, so that you have to see 1 second. Just let's look at that for a second. That is Lashon Hara. That is Motzi Shemra. Right? It's a version of the Erev Ravs twisting all of what we have to bring out into the world and making it evil. Because what we're really doing is Moser Nefesh for good. And what's being expressed to the world to block all of the revelation that's coming through is, no, those people are really, really evil.
No, they didn't say evil. They just said, I hope the Jews and Arabs could learn. It's very sad. It's very sad.
That's a judgment call.
Okay. They look at the whole thing.
It's not that we can't get along. We can get along. It's just that there are people who are evil who are trying to kill us.
Okay.
And it would be very different. They wouldn't. And I say this with Be'ervon Mubal because some people would, but like they wouldn't have said that with the Nazis, right? Like I wished everybody can get along with the Nazis. No, there are certain people you have to fight. They're evil, right? And there are people who won't. And people would change the entire history and say, oh yeah, whatever, Germany, the Allies were the bad people, right? But that's all klipa. In other words, it's because people can't see the difference in good and evil. But if they would see the difference in good and evil, they wouldn't look at it that way. They would say, wow, you're willing to die for protecting.
I hear that. That's my pain. Yep.
Right. So it's a painful part of, like we spoke about before, the fact that Kfira is able to run the world is part of this process of Pekida, where for a lot of reasons we spoke about, but it's a definitely integral part of it that we're going to see people translating this goof as a goof, as completely netek to its source. You don't have high values, you're just a political body, and you're actually motivated by all of the evil inclinations of the lowest part of the body, and that's who you really are. And that that is possible for people, as we learned, one of the reasons for that is that in that state it wakes people up, and it says, actually I'm not evil. Actually, I really have some very seriously, I believe in stuff, and that pushes people to create the Shechina, the Ruach, which is coming Milamala, to create it with Biyadayim, with their own Ratzon. the very fact that there's these snagdos and telling you the opposite. So that's also part of the process. And I agree with you that if we wouldn't have revelations of the Nevi'im and different Sfarim Nistarim that are teaching us things, we would be quite confused, right? And we would be like, "What? How does this? Like, it's like Avraham Avinu's Biur Dolek. It's like, how are we advancing to Malchus Shamayim through this business, right? The same way people would say in the Purim story when Haman's coming to power, this is not good for the Jews. This is not good for God." And it's like, yes, it's perfect. It's absolute perfection. So it's the same type of thing. And there's always going to be the Mechusar Emunah, and it's not in the Chilonim necessarily. It could be in Anshe Shlomenu, which is like, no, this is all Maises Satan and the destruction of Torah and
And the oaths don't allow us to do this, the 3 oaths.
that's a sugya, and you have to learn that sugya and find out what is it coming to teach you, and what restrictions do we have, right?
Yeah, when suddenly we're making halacha from a Gadata, and the Midrash has another caveat, which is not in the Gemara, saying that if they ever persecute you, all bets are off. Throw the oaths out the window.
It's an entire sugya to learn, like every sugya
Yeah,
Satorah, but
suddenly all become.
But the point is that you can't. You have to know the stage we're in, right? And the stage we're in is a goof without a neshama. It's like a young person, and young people do stupid stuff, and you can't judge the entire process of the birth of a human into this world by what he did as a 5-year-old. You can't judge what a country does in its inception. And you have to understand there's a process, and we're in the middle, and it's going to be good. And just because a person is frum doesn't necessarily mean they have the right perspective of emunah and pnimius that they do, because a lot of times being so frum is super focused on details and missing the inside of the whole process, the inside of the midos. It's getting really late, so let's just quickly finish off this point about the different mitzvahs that we have that represent different parts of a person. So we have the malchus. That's pretty easy to see how that's a very level of functionality day in and day out, and very much is represented in the nefesh. Then we have a chelik of the am, which is called Sanhedrin. And Sanhedrin is their job is to when something is hidden from you, right? Ben dam and dam, din ben nega la nega, and you go up to the place where what you can have is revelation of Torah that is not like we have nowadays, which is kol min dailosis godu of different state Torahs of this person's opinion, but we come to with the siyata dishmaya of being in the lishkas hagazis. Again, another version of Matan Torah. This is what Hashem wants you to do. This is what Hashem wants you to do. Clear morals, clear setup, clear how to live in a way that connects you up to, in this world, connects you up to Ratzon Hashem. The tikkun of this world in its being a merkava for Hashem, right? Everything working on a spiritual level, which is relevant not only to the functionality of the Am, but being the Am HaNivchar and bringing Malchus Shamayim into the world, L'netzach Netzochim, right? That's the job of the Sanhedrin. And of course, the Melech should always be misiyayit with the Sanhedrin, like David HaMelech was, or when he's going to do any of his things, because he has to find out if it works what he wants to do, if it's a proper vehicle to bring out the next level of the goal. The nefesh and the ruach are supposed to work together, right? The ruach is supposed to be expressed in the nefesh. If the nefesh makes its own system, which invalidates the emotional world of a human being, it's not going to be a happy human being, right? It's not going to be a functional human being. So if the practicality of the Medina is done in a way where it blocks the kiyum mitzvahs of Torah and bringing the ultimate tikkun of the world, it's not going to be good. So the Melech and the Sanhedrin have to work together, but they have different jobs. They're doing different things. They are feeding different parts of the necessity of the Am. And then we have what's called Kohen Gadol. And Kohen Gadol is he is the Merkaz Chai HaNeshama Shel Am Yisrael, right? It's the Neshama of Elokus, Mislubish B'toch Haguf. In the Mikdash, like there's a house, which is the house of all of Am Yisrael, where all of our avoda towards the Melech happens, right? It's the place where the Melech and Am have an intimate relationship. There's a very strong revelation. It's clear that he is nochach in our lives, and we're having a constant interaction with him. But the human being which represents that to its highest extent, on the avodah of Yom Kippur, he goes l'fnai and l'fnim and carries with him in this intimate relationship all of Am Yisrael is the Kohen Gadol. And without the chayus of the Mikdash, and the avodah of Kohen Gadol, and the avodah of Karbonos, all of the yichud that we have as an Am, and all of the morals and values that we would have of running even al pi Torah, wouldn't be an expression of a relationship of intimacy where Hashem is nochach in our day-to-day lives. That happens through the Beis HaMikdash. It's the difference between, like we spoke about before, it's like the Melech has a Medina and he tells people how to run the Medina. That's Torah. And he tells how to run the world, and he has a lot of opinions about, but you don't know what's going on in his personal world. You're not having a conversation with him and his what's important to him, what's his general goals of the entire world, what's he feeling about things, what's going on inside of him. That's an intimate relationship that happens only when you have Beis HaMikdash, only when you have Kohen Gadol. And that's the revelation of the neshama of Am Yisrael, right? Okay. And then there's the Madrega of Navi. Navi is a person who is the Chaya of the Chalam. He's Ole Mikol Yislab Shuzaguf, and he's Mamshich Dvar Hashem. He's actually able to instead of just understanding how Hashem relates to day-to-day life, and he's Nochach, right? It's actually him speaking. It's actually him. It's a new version of him expressing himself in ways that was not revealed until then. So it's something completely new. I'm now my Panemius is now more in you, right? Okay, that's level of Chaya. Okay, and then of course the ultimate goal of everything is that Klal Yisrael should be kulam neviim, and that's what the revelation of Chaya, which is going to be in all of us, is going to be that we're all going to be able, we're all going to be kol am Yisrael kulam neviim. Okay. There's more to do. We're going to stop now. And I guess we'll continue up after Pesach.